Welcome back to another episode of RNT Fitness Radio. This week, Akash and I have Lou Schuler on the line, who is a writer over in the US, but a writer specifically within the fitness niche. And he has been doing this for decades. Lou has an impressive resume. He was one of the first writers for Weeder publications back in the day, back in the glory days of sort of Arnie and whatnot. He has released books. He's worked for Men's Fitness, Men's Health. He's now working for the PTDC as their sort of head editor. Really, really cool guy. Awesome sense of humor. You'll hear right from the off that we were making jokes about my hairline and his hairline and how Akash is, luckily for now, has a full head of hair. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. Akash and I got a lot out of this, so I hope you guys can benefit too. Enjoy. You know, you got a problem when one of your clients just randomly, back when I was on the gym floor a couple of years ago, just out the blue, I've been training her for about 2 years, just out the blue in one of our rest periods, she just turns to me and says, "Adam, have you thought about getting a hair transplant?" I said, pardon? Huh? Hair transplant? She's like, it's nothing to be ashamed about anymore. And I said, where'd this come from?
Yeah.
Like, well, I've been thinking it for sort of the last 8 to 9 months. She goes, every time you bend over to change your weights, I can see your scalp. So I kind of planted the seed. So I was like, oh, right, okay. So it's either hair transplant, which is, ridiculous money, or just whip it all off, which is I think what I'm going to head on to doing.
It is economical.
Yes. Akash should be here any second. I did invite him in.
Yeah.
Just make sure that he's...
Yeah, we've never... there he is. Oh, there we go.
Oh, here he is. Yeah.
Oh, God, now that's some hair. Look at all that.
Yeah, he's got the full on. Yeah. He's got
No recession there.
Not yet.
No. We've got Akash with the full head of hair. We've got me with the receding hairline and thinning scalp, and then we've got Lou that's just sort of fuck it, take it all off.
I'm just the universal after picture. I mean, that's just, or maybe the before picture if you're selling hair transplants. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I take it you're familiar with the whole podcasting setup, and
I've done. Oh my God! Now, does that look better or worse?
Honestly, whatever you're happy with, we're cool. We don't put the video out there. We just extract the audio from it.
Oh, fuck. Okay, there we go. Fine.
You've been getting ready. You've been getting ready all day for it.
I don't give a shit. Yeah.
Yeah. We the reason that we like doing the video is just that during the conversation, you can kind of read the other person's body language. There's a little bit of that going on, but we don't put the video out there. So.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
So I can, and this is great because when I start going off on a rant or something like that, then I can just watch your eyes start to cross.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
I'll see. Somebody picks up their phone and starts checking their messages. And yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't think it will. Just been reading up on you over the last few days. Obviously, Akash has gone back and forth with you, and I've read some of your stuff, and the last couple of days been reading your biography and whatnot. So.
It took you 2 days to read my biography. Oh, I guess I'm a man of many accomplishments.
Well, you've been around for a while.
I have been around for a while. That is true. But the great thing about starting my career pre-internet is there's all the, all the bullshit is, it doesn't exist. It's like all the stuff I did that was just print before, and all the unproduced screenplays and unpublished novels. Nobody sees that, so I can't be embarrassed by any of that shit.
That's the beauty, and also the catch-22 of the internet, though, right? Is that now everything's there to haunt you. Now we've gone into that era.
That's right. I mean, somebody who's starting. Oh, well, I won't waste it. We should put this in a conversation because that's
go for it. Yeah.
I hit record as soon as we started talking about hair loss.
Great. So, but I assume you're not. Are you recording this second?
Yeah. We've recorded it from now. So just whenever you're good to go.
Oh no, I'm fine. I just wanted to make sure with your audience, is it okay to swear? I won't do it.
Absolutely.
I won't do it gratuitous. All right. I mean, you guys are English. I mean, you use words that if you said those in the U.S., you'd be like, if you weren't starting a fight, like if you were too big for somebody to punch out, you might the consequences of using words that you guys use like every 5 minutes, if we use them once here, would be catastrophic.
Yeah, we have no filter over here.
I'm still surprised you've never been here, right?
I never have, and I feel bad about that. I'm just not a fucking traveler. It's like I travel when people send me somewhere on an assignment. I don't never spend the money, to go do things myself, and that's stupid. But it's what can I say?
You're out in Pennsylvania, right?
Pennsylvania, yeah. So which is close to Philly and New York, Washington, D.C. So there's big cities around here, but I should be, should at least by, 61 years old, I should have at least seen London once.
Just out of interest, what is it that you're not a fan of with travel? Is it that you just don't like breaking routine, or? I
just don't do it. I don't want to waste everything, but basically I like to work. I don't, if I need to go somewhere, I'm happy to go somewhere. If somebody wants to send me somewhere, like all writers, I'm just naturally really cheap. I don't like to pay for shit myself. So
here we go. Yeah,
I never do vacations unless my family really pressures me, and yeah.
Yeah, you and Akash are on the same wavelength there. Then
I've never heard that. So I've never heard that association before.
What, writers being cheap?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can tell you stories.
Yeah, that's why you're drawn to it, Akash. Let's kick this off with, for those outside of the pond that are listening in on this and perhaps into fitness, but typical trainers over here, they don't educate themselves as much as they should do, but they do seem to be listening to podcasts recently. I think it's the attention deficit thing. They don't read as much as they should, but they listen. So who is Lou Schuler?
I don't know, just some old bald-headed guy. I mean, why are Okay, so all right. So the thing that is will be startling to your young listeners is that I'm probably more than twice as old as the average person listening to this. I started my career. We were talking about this off air. Started my career a long time ago, long before the internet. And the reason that anybody would have heard of me, the reason we're talking now, is that I stumbled into fitness writing in the early 1990s. I worked for Joe Weider. He owned a magazine called Men's Fitness, which doesn't even exist in print, at least here. I don't know if it still does there. It's just online now here. So I started working there in 1992 as a copy editor. I got promoted to fitness editor. And then I came to Men's Health in 1998 here in Pennsylvania in the U.S., and that's kind of when things took off. I published my first book called The Testosterone Advantage Plan came out in the January 2002. Best known now for the New Rules of Lifting series, which is 6 books that I wrote with Alan Cosgrove. Our bestseller in that series is The New Rules of Lifting for Women, which came out, and this is really hard to believe, that came out 10 years ago in 2008. But that's consistently been our bestseller. I'm editorial director of the Personal Trainer Development Center, which is how I met Akash. He wrote a terrific article for us on how to gain weight, which is something that, probably what would you guys say, 75 to 90% of personal training clients come in for weight loss or get lean or something like that.
Yeah.
But there are some who actually want to gain a few pounds. So, Akash wrote this terrific article for us, came out a couple weeks. I'm not sure when the podcast goes, but I don't know the exact date, but it was a couple weeks ago from when we're talking. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing that since December, but I've been for 26 years now. I have been a very much full-time fitness writer, editor, author, and that's the only reason anybody would have heard of me.
So Lou, before you said you took your job under Joe Weider in the early 90s. What were you doing before that in the 80s?
So I graduated from journalism school in 1979, and I just had this conventional career. I worked for newspapers. I worked for magazines. I was a I was on staff. I was a freelancer back in the pre-internet days, back when, if you wanted to reach out to somebody, you picked up the phone and you called them, and, so the phone rang all day because you got random calls from people. In about the mid-'80s, in 1984, I moved to Los Angeles. I was living in St. Louis, Missouri. Moved to Los Angeles, 2,000 miles away. I'd never been to that city, but I wanted to write screenplays, and that was a place to do it. So I did that for about 5 years, got back into journalism. Somehow, when I got back into journalism, all of a sudden, fitness is popular again. So people are talking about fitness, and I was like journalists are like notoriously unhealthy. There are people who keep the bottle of whiskey in their desk. So here I was this guy who watched my diet. I was lean and in shape, and I'd been working out since I was 13. So here I am in my late 20s, early 30s. And I'm like the only guy who's into this thing that's suddenly popular. And so they would send me out to do those stories. And what I didn't realize at the time was that was going to be my career path. So as it happened in 1991, I was in graduate school for creative writing at the University of Southern California back in Los Angeles. And I answered an ad in a newspaper, and it was for an editor at this magazine I'd never heard of called Men's Fitness.
Oh, so you were never actually training people then? You're always in the writing side of it. Right.
I have when I first became fitness editor at Men's Fitness, I got a training certification. I took classes at a local college. I got an ACE certification. I don't know if you guys have that over there.
We don't have it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah. And then when I got to Men's Health, I got my CSCS from the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and I've maintained that ever since, but I have never once trained a client one-on-one. Programs in most of my books were written by my co-authors. Although I can write a program, and it would certainly probably be a good entry level program. But once you get to intermediate or above, I don't consider that my department. I'll always turn that over to somebody else.
So what drew you into training? You said 13, right?
Oh, well, yes.
When you started training yourself, what sort of got you into fitness?
Yeah, I was obsessed with sports for as long as I can remember. Always had an interest in, if I'm walking down the street, I would always notice physiques. I don't know how I got that really. I guess, my dad was really obese. And so I was aware from a really early age that my dad was fatter than everybody else. And I was also aware that I was skinnier than everybody else because I couldn't go 5 fucking minutes without somebody reminding me that I was the skinniest guy in the room. And I was like the only skinny guy that wanted to play sports. It's like the other guys who were as skinny as me, they would like wear long sleeve sweaters in July because they didn't want anyone to laugh at how skinny they were. And of course this is back in the 60s and 70s when everybody was skinny compared to now. But I was so self-conscious about it. I love sports. And so I started working out when I started lifting weights when I was 13, just so I could get like stronger, faster, so I didn't get knocked around as much, just to give me a chance to compete, because otherwise I was always going to be the worst guy on the team. So I had to do something. And so that's why I started working out.
So you were literally training when Arnold was at his peak, right?
Yeah, but I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, no idea. Okay.
I never, this is bizarre, but I never picked up a bodybuilding magazine till I worked for one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know. And it's like, how could that be if you were really into it? And it's like, I was never into bodybuilding. I just wanted to get bigger and stronger.
So where were you getting your information from? Was it things like Bill Pearl and?
Nope. It was first my older brother, who was 2 years older than me, and we worked out together. And then it was strictly word of mouth. When I was in my 20s, I guess, I bought a Gold's Gym. It was called Gold's Gym bodybuilding book. And it was like the first time I realized that there were actually like programs. And I'm other than the ones that came with the weight set, where you put the little poster up on your wall and it gives you like 8 or 9 exercises. And I would always skip the squats and the deadlifts because we never had enough, I never had a squat rack. We never had enough weight anyway. So I bought this Gold's Gym bodybuilding book. And it was like the first time it's like, whoa, So it's like, if you do a set for your chest, you should do a set for your back. This is amazing. My God, who knew? So,
groundbreaking.
It was like all the other lights went on. And so I did that same program for like months, and then lent the book to a friend and never saw it again. And it was really until I got to Men's Fitness then, which would have been 5, 6, 7 years after that, that I really began to sort of like focus on programs again, because now they're in all the magazines. And I'm in this building. I'm in Joe Weider's publishing company, Weider Publications. And not only am I working on a fitness magazine, but now the editors of Muscle and Fitness and Flex are right here. And you would walk in the door at Weider, and there were these giant paintings of all the bodybuilding champs, so there's Arnold, and and there's Franco Columbo, and there's Frank Zane. And so you walk in the door and you see that. So it's like all muscles everywhere all the time. The bodybuilders would come to visit Joe, and they'd be walking around, and so it was so at that point it was like all programs all the time. And probably I would say for at least 25 years I've never worked out without a program. So I don't remember what your original question was, but I gave you a
It was, did you look up to, were you at, you must have seen Arnold at his peak, is when you started training.
Oh,
that's why I asked,
No, I had no concept. He would go on like The Tonight Show, which was this TV show with a guy named Johnny Carson. It was a late night show. And, people would talk about him the next day at school. And I can remember these conversations where they go, wow, did you see that? As soon as he wasn't flexing, all his muscle just turned to fat. So it's like, if a guy's not flexing, it's like, oh my God, it just looked like he had boobs. And then of course that was, that was like the most pernicious myth. And there's probably people out there still believe it.
People still do, yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you stop working out, or in Arnold's case, as soon as you stop flexing, it all turns to fat, which is, we had, like I said, absolutely no idea. Everything I knew back then was what I picked up from my older brother and his friends.
Wow. What was it like?
Can you believe that? All those wasted years. And it's like I could have, and I did get stronger, which is the weirdest thing, that it's like you could be stupid, but if you just keep doing it, something's going to happen.
Yeah. What was it like during kind of, I'm a big fan of bodybuilding, and I would say, obviously I wasn't around at that time, but I would say that was kind of the peak of bodybuilding. Like the physiques back then are amazing. When you would sort of go into the offices and stuff, how would they sort of carry themselves? Were they arrogant? What was the mindset like? What was the general public's perception of bodybuilders back then?
Well, in terms of the editors that I worked with, they were nice. They were the nicest people. There was, it's like any office, you've got your mix of people who, just have, issues, including me. So everybody you kind of sidestep around certain people, but the people who were actually bodybuilders, who actually wrote about bodybuilding, nicest people in the world, in retrospect, it's amazing that these guys gave me so much time and explained all this basic shit to me, the science, they would share information, they would, tell me stories. And a couple of them were bodybuilders. A couple of them were just regular folks who were journalists who ended up getting into this, to work as editors. At that time in 92, and I have an imperfect memory, I think it was like where we were transitioning from like the Lee Haney years onto the Dorian Yates years. And then from Dorian, we're going to go to Ronnie. So I went to a couple shows, got to go to a couple of Olympias back then. So I saw, I think the last couple years of Dorian winning, and saw like the first time of, Ronnie Coleman on the stage. So I saw that transition. Probably, and I think, you guys can correct me, but I think bodybuilding historians will say that the big turning point was when Dorian gained like, 20 pounds of solid muscle one off season. And all of a sudden he went from like this, I described what he looked like. And actually I can remember the first time I saw a picture of it, the editor of Muscle and Fitness was saying, this is my aesthetic. And he showed this picture of the new Dorian. And I joked in one of my books, I said, he looked like a rock slide with nipples. I mean, it wasn't even recognizably human. It was just like all this slabs of shit, you know, and it was a black and white photo. So it just all, you know, it was all gray.
Yeah, it was those old like granite type looking photos.
Like,
yeah.
How is that an aesthetic? You know, I can look at, you know, I was aware of the bodybuilding that was going on during my life way later. So I can look at those guys now. And I can look at, like, especially the first guys who are using steroids. Like I'll look at Larry Scott, right?
Yeah.
So I look at him, and here's a guy with like these really small frame guys. And so what did the steroids do? They just put this mass on where he was totally incapable of putting it on himself. And it was like this beautiful aesthetic look with these fantastically full muscle bellies and you know, and then you go from that. Eventually you work your way up to Arnold. And those guys back then, I know they were using a lot of drugs, but I don't know if it was the way they trained or the fact that they weren't doing like the growth hormone and the insulin yet. And I don't even pretend to be an expert on, you know, any of those areas. It's just what I've heard people say.
Yeah.
Boy, you know, you just look at the aesthetics of the 1970s into like maybe through the 1980s, and you look at that and you go, I don't know that anything has ever looked better before or since. That would be my preference. I know other people like the bigger ones. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I look at the physiques nowadays, and from Dorian onwards, you can't help but look at it in awe. In that it's just damn impressive. How the hell do you pack that much muscle on a frame? But is it a look that I would aspire to? No, that's
to me,
more.
To me, the pinnacle was Frank Zane.
But exactly. Yeah, Frank Zane.
Yeah.
Is the
well, and those guys back then, you know, the thing, and I know this is not an original thought. I've heard it, I don't know how many times, but it strikes me as being absolutely true. The top guys back then, if you cut off, you know, if you took a bunch of pictures and you just blocked out the heads and you just looked at the physiques, you could tell who the guys were. You could pick out Frank Zane, you could pick out Franco, you could pick out Arnold, you know, some of them, probably a half dozen others, whose names aren't coming to mind right now. You know, Menser was another one. You could.
Yeah,
you know,
100%. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's that guy.
Yeah.
With even now, when you've got more guys, and I don't follow it at all now, but if you look at the guys who are like more the I don't know, the Instagram stars versus, you know, the cover model types, even now they're so impossibly ripped. It was like we used to marvel that Frank Zane could get that ripped, and now people walk around like that. You know?
Yeah. That's people just dieting down to look good on holiday now.
Right, I know. And so I look at that and I go, yeah, you know, it's like even the most fantastically fit person isn't special anymore. You don't look at a physique and it doesn't just take your breath away. You know, you don't get awed anymore. It's like, well, okay, so that guy's huger than everybody else. Fuck, we've done huge. We know, you know, you do enough drugs and you got the right genetics and, you know, you want it bad enough. Yeah, you pack on that. You know, you can get huge. You know, the guy's super, super ripped. It's like, yeah, okay, but, you know, I don't know. Maybe it was just being young and seeing it for the first time.
Yeah. Interesting. What were you going to say?
So it's sort of like the opposite of sex. It's like the first time was like, okay, I'm going to remember that, but that wasn't great. And then you just keep getting better and better. Bodybuilding, you know, it goes the opposite way. The first time you see a fantastic physique, it's like, wow, you know, and that's the one you remember.
Yeah, when you got to Guido, were you immediately hooked by the fitness scene? Because before that, you weren't writing fitness, right?
I wasn't writing fitness, but I never stopped working out. I was from 13 on. I probably never went a month without being into, you know, some sort of regular program. When I couldn't afford a gym, which was, my father bought me a gym membership in 1980. And I've had a gym membership, either one I've paid for or a corporate membership, almost continuously since then. So, you know, we're talking, you know, whatever that is, 48 years. And it's, no, 38 years, sorry. But so I never was not into it. But when I got there, yeah, I mean, it was, especially when all of a sudden I had all this information, and I realized how much information was out there. Then it was, I was always, picking the brains of those guys and that I worked with, picking any information I could out of those magazines, trying everything. So that was, it just took up a notch what was already there.
Awesome. So I could geek out about bodybuilding and talk to you bodybuilding for ages, but the real reason that we've got you on here is so that Akash can geek out and listen to you talking about writing. So let's transition now into the writing side of things. Okay. This is Akash's sort of main passion. So describe to us like your writing process.
I knew he'd laugh.
I'm going to repeat myself here. I've said this before. Talking to a professional writer about his writing process is like talking to a prostitute about sex, because when you do it for a living, it's a completely different it's a completely different mode of thought. I get up at 4 a.m, and most mornings, usually by 5, I'm answering emails and trying to kind of like get into the mode, and then I've got all day. I work out, take off for that, or I'll have meetings or other stuff that I have to do. Family stuff is a big one, but essentially I'm going to be at that computer for about 12 hours that day, sometimes 13, 14 hours. So that's just what I do. I don't have a process, and I can't tell anybody else how to have a process. I can talk about publishing and how to get into that, with a caveat that everybody who gets every fitness professional who builds a name for him or herself does it a little bit differently, and a lot of it depends on their personality and their area of expertise and all that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's going to be interesting. Before you get to that, though, I would like to go back into the writing just a touch for myself, actually.
Right.
So Akash, he has a huge passion in writing. He has his process, and his process is that he gets up, his phone is on flight mode, he doesn't check emails, all social media notifications are switched off, and that's him for the next 3 hours. Am I right?
Yeah, just for 3 hours in the morning, and then it becomes client work, emails, etc. But for the first 3 hours of the day, I'll just be writing. Yeah.
So that's how he does it.
That's awesome. That's admirable. Yeah.
Now, for me, writing isn't a passion of mine. When Akash and I spoke.
Good for you. We don't need the competition. So.
when I spoke to Akash a while ago, we figured out that I'm okay on camera to a degree. So that's my form on Instagram for the most part is a video. However, I think it is still important that I do some written work, right, to stay relevant and have your work out there. So do you have advice that you give to people that perhaps don't have a passion, that want to improve at writing, where it's not their main job? Like, where do you, my biggest struggle is starting the damn thing. Yeah.
Okay. So my advice to somebody who doesn't want to do this for a living or doesn't want to devote 3 hours a day like Akash does, which is really awesome. I could never, I guess when I was younger and I was like writing screenplays and stuff, I could get into a routine where I just would just sort of like block out the rest of the world and just go for hours. I mean, back in, literally working on a manual typewriter back then, or an electric typewriter.
It was probably easier back then as well, right? Because you didn't have the distraction that we have now.
Yeah, but that's what I thought too. But I knew people who called themselves writers and wanted to write and couldn't bring themselves to sit down and write. And I think that whether we're in the internet era or we're in the 19th century and people are writing things by hand, there's a phrase, I can't remember who said it, but it was, you've got to master the room. You've got to be able to sit in a room by yourself with no entertainment, no company, no validation, no one looking over your shoulder, and you just got to sit down and do it. And if you can master the room, if you can handle being lonely and being insecure and being unsure if what you're doing is the right thing to do, but if you can do that regularly, preferably daily, you can be a writer. And it doesn't matter, and the thing about, who's a writer, who's not a writer, what a bullshit, kind of discussion to even have. If you write, you're a writer. You could be a published writer or not. You can be a in-demand writer or not. You can be a successful writer in terms of reaching your own goals or not. You can be an award-winning writer or not. But if you write, you're a writer. So, whatever can get you into the room, whatever can get you so excited about what you're doing that what goes on in the outside world is not appealing to you during that time, that you don't want to check the emails, you don't want to go online, you don't want to run out of the room and have a random conversation with somebody. You don't need you don't need to check in with somebody to tell you that you're okay. If you can handle that sometimes it's boring, but the biggest part of it is that you have no idea if what you're doing is the right thing for you to be doing. You have no idea if what you're doing is good, if anybody's ever going to like it, if it's on the right track, if you're going to whatever it is. If you can handle being in that room and plowing forward, even with all the things you can't possibly know at the time you're doing it, then you can be a writer. And that's what writing is.
Yeah.
I know I'm supposed to talk about the glamorous shit where you walk on the red carpet and people throw, underwear at you, but no.
That hasn't happened to you yet?
No.
Okay, so let's move on.
Do you want to talk about the publishing thing you're about to mention?
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, let's go.
Only if you guys do. Yeah.
It was actually one of our questions. Yeah, we'd like to know this.
Okay.
So what sort of processes do you have to go through to turning sort of an idea of a book into an actual book, and then from there, what the steps?
Oh, so you want to go straight to a book, huh? So you want to go, and then getting back to our prostitute, analogy. Now we're just going straight from, virginity to full time. I'm happy booker, right? Yeah.
What were you going to talk about?
Well, I was just going to talk about all the intermediate steps.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. In
the process.
Yeah.
The thing about a book, it's really like it's the beginning of one part of your career, but there's so much that leads up to that. First, if you have to be in the habit of writing, you have to enjoy it. Because if you don't enjoy writing, there is no goddamn reason to even think about a book. Because a book is the most frustrating damn thing you can, if you've never taken one on. If you're doing it right, it's going to take you months to write. All these people who say they write shit in weeks. I mean, what are they actually writing? I mean, sometimes never mind. But it's
I can tell you're passionate about this. I like that.
Well, when people say, so I wrote my first book in a week, and it's like, the fuck did you write? Did you sit there like Jack Nicholson in the Shining, too much work, makes, what was it? All work and no play makes Jack dull, whatever it was. So is that what you did? Is that how you wrote a book in a week? Your first thing is you've got to enjoy it, and you've got to get your work out there, and you've got to find a place where your work belongs, and where by extension you belong, where you've got an audience, you've got people who are who want more from you. That's the time to start thinking about a longer project. Now, of course. And I say that knowing that nowadays, with so many people throwing out so many bits and pieces of information, that I wonder who is clamoring for longer form work from anybody. I mean, nobody wants it from me now. I haven't written a book in a couple of years now. And I used to write like one every, 12 to 18 to 24 months. But I see virtually no demand right now. Because there's so much other stuff, and there's so much stuff that pays better, and it's easier to do, and that the audience seems to want more. So, when you get to the process of writing a book, I can give you a million tips for that. I'm just not sure how useful they are.
Akash?
So, yeah, when we talk about writing a book, it's never been about, I think we're doing it more from like a personal pride, you know, having something physical rather than the money. Because all the writing I do, I don't really get paid for it. I don't really do it for the money. I mean, we make our money through coaching. So this would be more for, you know, like a personal goal more than anything.
Yeah, I think a personal goal.
Is it to expand your business to like have we're the authors of this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it'd be that too.
Okay, that's good.
It'd be like a business card. It'd be
and also that it's so intangible that people can touch. I know it sounds funny, but we're an online business,
right?
So if we can actually physically get into people's houses,
yeah, that's what we want.
Something they touch, something that reminds them, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You know, in that case, you know, then in terms of the process of writing a book, I would not attempt it without an outline. And I mean, I would write an outline that's so detailed that when you sit down to write the book, it's it's actually a disappointment. It feels tedious to actually sit down and write the book, because the exciting part should be in outlining it and getting all your ideas down and figuring out exactly how to make them flow and exactly what the readers are going to want out of this book. Because it doesn't help your business at all if you've got your name on a book that nobody ever opens, you know? So you want to make sure that once somebody opens this book that they want to turn to page 2. And once they're on page 2, they want to keep going. And when you tell them you've got a program in the book, they want to get to the program. They might skip right ahead to the program, which is fine, but you want to make sure that whatever you spend all this time putting on paper is actually worth having on paper.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah. Anything else that you want to talk to about publishing, Akash?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's my job to crush everyone's dreams. So it's, you know, you got.
No, it's not crush. It's got me more excited.
Pardon me?
It's got me more excited by it.
Well, right. And when I said about the really detailed outline, sometimes it helps to even do that when you're writing like longer, more complicated articles, or if you're putting out like an online product. Even if like 90% of the content's going to be videos, you're still going to put some stuff in words in a document for people to follow along with your instructions and everything. Even that, I would go overboard with the outlining, so that it's such an anticlimax when you're actually sitting down to write. It should feel like you've already written that book. It should feel like if it feels like it's already written, then you're just sort of filling in the blanks when you write. And at various points, that part of the process is still going to be really fun, and it's going to be as exciting as writing ever gets. But the main thing, the real work, with a nonfiction book, is that outline.
Planning, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because I was writing an article this morning for Elite FTS, and I spent an hour, 1.5 pages just on the outline.
Yeah.
And the article will probably end up only being about 2.5 pages. So it's good you said that. It's just reaffirmed that I didn't waste time this morning.
And I'll tell you something else. And this is a real. I got this from a screenwriting class I took a million years ago. If you put words on paper, like they said, if you start writing the dialogue and the screenplay, and the equivalent of that would be if you start writing actual paragraphs that are going to go into the story, once you've written them, you don't ever want to delete them. So if you can restrict yourself to writing this outline, you can figure out what needs to go where. You can figure out the flow of the story, and you can also figure out what should not be there, what you don't need, before you actually have to cut out words that as soon as you write a sentence, you fall in love with it. And I guess some writers call it killing your babies, where you got to maybe that refers to like killing off characters in novels or something like that. But I mean, I think more broadly for writers, killing your babies just comes to mean, I wrote this wonderful thing, and now I've got to cut it because it doesn't fit. So my trick for that, because every writer's going to do it anyway. I mean, everyone's going to ignore that advice. I ignore my own advice. Is to, when I start working on a story, or even like a chapter of a book when I was writing books, along with the actual document that I'm writing the chapter, that is the chapter or the article, I always open a file called leftovers for that. And that way, if there's something that doesn't fit, I can just, okay, I wrote that and I'm going to put it in the leftovers. And now I haven't cut it. It still exists, but it's not in the article anymore. So it's just like, it's like putting your kids in foster care rather than giving up for adoption, like that.
I love the analogies you come up with.
Yeah, these are good ones.
Yeah, I'm on a roll, aren't I? And you can tell I got no writing done today. So it's like, oh, great. Yeah. Why didn't I save some of this for?
Yeah, we're stealing all your creative juices.
Yeah.
Which is your favorite book that you've written?
My favorite book I've written? Oh, man. I'm going to say the original New Rules of Lifting, because it was the first book that I got to write in the first person. I'd written, I don't know how many books before then, and parts of books, and just like sort of rewritten books that were published under other people's names. So the original New Rules of Lifting, I started writing it with Alan Cosgrove in 2004. And it came out in January 2006. And it was the first time I got to write in first person, where I just got to, tell stories without saying we did this or you want to do this. I could write, there was first person singular. And, if I was going to refer to something that Alan told me, I could say Alan told me this, and Alan's program does this, and Alan prefers this exercise over that exercise for this reason. But when I was talking, the rest of the narrative, it could be, I'm going to take you through this process. And, and we were also talking about basing your workout around movement patterns rather than muscle groups, talking about, not wasting time on single joint exercises, all these things. In retrospect, I would probably cringe if I went back to that book, which, again, we were in the process of writing 14 years ago, and look at that and see things that I expressed as absolutes that obviously are not absolutes. But it was my favorite because it was the first time that it felt like, this is my book. This isn't just a product for my company. This is my thing. This is my narrative. This is my story. And it's also this great program where I've got this great co-author who gave you this great program that's going to totally transform the way you think about training and the way you do it. But I got to tell the story the way I wanted to, in my own voice, and my own sense of humor and all that. So that was, so basically what I'm saying is that my life peaked 14 years ago. I've just been playing out the string ever since.
So if you've got two authors, do you recommend writing it as a we?
It depends on the project, if it's,
why were you able to say I in that one if you were co-authoring it with Owen? Was it because you only did the programs, or?
No, well, yeah, and that's, I'd written so many articles in that kind of generic Men's Health we voice, we regular guys are going to do that, which is great for that brand. So when I was putting out Men's Health branded books, one called Testosterone Advantage Plan, another one called Home Workout Bible, third one called Book of Muscle, which I wrote with Ian King. The we voice was more that Men's Health voice, that there's like this collective, intelligence that's giving this to you through this one specific way of communicating. But what I found was that writing as the I, it was much easier to delineate whose opinion this was and whose contribution this was. So if you look at it, like if you did a scan of how many times I used the word Alan in a book that I wrote with Alan, I don't know, it would be in the hundreds, probably, the thousands, maybe over the course of the 10-book series or 6-book series. I'm sorry, but it would be, but it delineated. Okay, this is his idea. This is his program, and it's half the book. I mean, it's all these pages and pages and pages of Alan's program, but the parts of the narrative, the parts that I research, the parts that offer my opinion or my interpretation of something that I could take credit for, which to me was like this big breakthrough.
Yeah. You mentioned that if you could go back, if you were to read your books again, you would see certain things that you'd spoken about in absolutes that now wouldn't be considered absolutes and so on.
Right.
what the most interesting trends that you've seen throughout the industry over the past couple of decades? Wow. And it doesn't have to be exclusively training. It could be nutrition, training. The fact that people now are reading more online than
right.
Paper.
Well, I would say basically everything comes full circle, and if it hasn't come full circle yet, it's going to. When I started at Weider, everything was low fat. How low could you get? I remember we did a feature at Men's Fitness where a guy tried to eat a 10% fat diet or get below 10% fat, because that was like an actual recommendation back then, which is almost nobody could ever actually do.
Yeah.
So we saw that, and then and then we got to, I guess, the zone. My own book, Testosterone Advantage Plan, was, kind of a zone type balanced macronutrient diet. South Beach, and then, then you get this whole second wave of the low carb stuff, Atkins, South Beach diet, which was published by my company, Rodale, when I was there. And now the research is certainly going back the other direction, saying that, people who eat less fat actually are lighter and leaner. And so it's not like we're at the point where we're back to, fat's bad for you, because obviously demonstrably it's not. But we're certainly back at, eat what you like and find a way to, probably eat a little bit less than you do, or at least find a way to manage your calories. And if you do that easier with a lower fat versus a lower carb diet, good for you. With more protein versus less protein, whatever works for you, as long as you can keep your weight in this, in this range is healthy for you. And for almost everybody out there, other than, just the fittest of the fit, almost everybody weighs a few more pounds than they probably should for their health or for their own personal satisfaction. Almost everybody eats more than they need to. So whatever can help you eat less than that, and like we were talking about earlier, 75 to 90% of your clients want to lose weight. So whatever can help them eat less is what matters most. But early in my career, I certainly went overboard with telling people that if they ate carbs, they were going to automatically overeat. Just idiotic, It's just it was. It made sense at the time, and it was something I was passionate about at the time. Retrospect, it was too extreme.
What's the craziest supplement you've tried?
I don't try supplements. I don't.
You've probably seen the industry grow from nothing to what it is now, right?
Well, that's a good one. The thing is that the way the supplement industry works is that you get the products long before you get the research, right? I mean, you guys, everyone knows this. So you get a product like HMB and everybody's excited about it. And then it's like, that doesn't really do anything. And then you get right now, what is the one? Beta-alanine is the one that sports scientists have been trying for 10 years now to find. It's like a solution in search of a problem. It's like for 10 years, they've been trying to figure out what beta-alanine does so that they can sell it. The other, and then there's stuff that's just, and right now vegan proteins. Everybody wants to find a vegan protein, and they'll put them in these supplements without anybody knowing, how bioavailable they are in this particular combination. I mean, you can't test every combination that's coming out, so you can keep pumping products into the market long ahead of whatever research into their efficacy. And then, there's all this stuff that, this thing, the testosterone boosting supplements and all those are kind of, that's kind of the supplement we're almost getting toward that's sort of the dark side, where people are just making up these claims like this one boosts your, testosterone or whatever, maybe there's a female equivalent to that. I don't know, but basically just making shit up and putting it out there and hoping they can make a lot of money before they get in trouble for it.
Sadly, people do fall for it all the time.
Yeah. Everybody wants, it's like probably the biggest hoax in my lifetime are these goddamn cleanses and
oh yeah, there was a girl literally on my Instagram yesterday that put photos up of these teas Oh, so and so, such a celebrity's been taking it. You take it for 7 days. So I looked into the ingredients. It's senna extract. It's a laxative.
What is it?
It's a senna extract that is the main ingredient. The first ingredient is extract of senna plant, which is used in Senokot, which is a mild laxative.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so
I gotta say, when you get to be my age, I get curiously excited when I hear mild laxative. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me.
Well, that's what these girls in their 20s are drinking this stuff by the gallon,
Oh my God!
And they're happy that in the first week they've lost 6-7 pounds, but it's because they're shit.
I just hope this shit doesn't have permanent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you hope so, right?
I mean, if somebody just starves himself for a week, I don't care. It's like you learn your lesson. You gain all the weight back. You lose a bunch of muscle. You gain all the weight back. You learn your lesson, hopefully. But the fact that people are still out there selling this shit, damn. I just, it boggles me. Detox is the other, is like the buzzword. I don't know if it's still out there, right? I know a few.
Yeah, of course it's still out there. Yeah, it's like, because we don't want to let our kidneys and liver do its job.
And then our skin, and it's like, really, you don't you don't think that if you just start eating a healthier diet that your body's going to take care of whatever you think is in you that needs to get out.
Yeah, apparently we're smarter than our bodies, right? So
that's and I'll throw in a plug for another book I wrote. It came out in 2014. It was called The Lean Muscle Diet. I wrote it with Alan Aragon, who is one of the most fantastic people I know in the fitness industry. He's smart and he's funny. And we wrote this book together, and that was one of his big points is that what is his phrase? Like he was talking about the so-called window of opportunity after a workout, where if you don't get your protein shake like 30 minutes after you work out, there's no point in even working out. And he said, we imagine that our bodies are looking at the world through this tiny little, portal, but actually, our bodies are looking through this massive picture window, and we're trying to micromanage a process that our bodies have been working on for the millions of years of human evolution.
Yeah, somehow though we're overcoming it, aren't we?
Right.
We're taking a couple of pills and
but and now in defense of, I hope this doesn't come off as a contradiction, but to an extent, we really have outsmarted our bodies with tobacco, with alcohol, with all this convenience food and all this food. And I'm not saying all processed food's bad, because I have a protein shake after every workout, so that's obviously highly processed. But we're putting all the shit into our bodies that are completely unfamiliar to our bodies.
Yeah.
So we've been outsmarting them, but in the wrong way. We've been outdumbing our bodies, I guess I should say. We've been out-stupiding our bodies by putting all this crap into them all these years and just saying to our bodies, okay, figure out a way to deal with all this sudden influx of sugar and the sudden influx of salt and all these manufactured fats and all that. So I get that. And, but, the way you, in terms of outsmarting your body and making it do stuff that your body doesn't, isn't designed to do, that's, we've got steroids, and what else do we have? Right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Now, seeing as we're sort of talking about, coming into health a little bit,
right.
Now that you're in your early 60s, how is your training and nutrition set up? And I know you said really, you're not big into supplements, but are there any health supplements you are taking that you see?
Oh no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said. I'm not into
the gimmicks,
into the gimmicks, and I also don't ever want to be the first person to try anything. Yeah. Whether we're talking about fashion or supplements, I don't, When it comes to fashion, my rule is I don't want to wear anything that's going to embarrass my kids. But
that's a good rule to live by.
No, but I take. I was into, I took fish oil for years, and then, and then the research came around, and right now I do take vitamin E.
E or D? E.
Pardon me?
E, do you say?
E, yes. And when I was younger, I took C and I'm sorry, I take D.
I take D, yeah.
I took C and E back in the day. And then it's like, oh, gee, well, people who, it turns out that take, dumping all these antioxidants into your body, that's not a good idea. So it's like, so I quit doing that, hopefully before I did any damage. And I've taken joint supplements of different kinds over the years. My mom had really bad arthritis. I could tell probably from my 40s on that I was on that track, so been really careful about that. Not that there's any supplements that appear to do a whole lot, but I've always taken something. It was glucosamine and chondroitin back then, and it's an eggshell extract that a friend recommended now. So the particulars don't matter, and obviously protein supplements, creatine, which the research on creatine could not be any more solid. I mean, we have not only a half century going back to when they first started using it on children who were born with these creatine deficiencies that would have been fatal. We not only have this research going all the way back to the early 70s or late 60s, but now in terms of just as a sports supplement, we have this research from the early 90s, early mid 90s on. So it could not be any more solid for safety and efficacy. So creatine, absolutely. Protein supplements for convenience. And what else? I do take one at night, L-theanine. I get one from Biotest called Z12.
Yeah.
Which definitely helps me fall into a deeper sleep earlier than I probably would have. So
yeah, I was talking to Akash about L-theanine last week, saying it's meant to help with GABA production, which would probably be why you can sleep a little bit better on it.
Yeah, and I don't, I don't know that it makes a huge difference, but I certainly notice a difference. Like if I'm on a trip, and I've forgotten to bring it with me, and that first night I might just have flat out insomnia and not sleep at all, or ever like fall into a really deep restful sleep. So I can tell the difference when I don't. Yeah.
What about your training and nutrition? How have you set that up?
Nutrition, I try to do what I can to eat less. Back in my weeder days, that was one of the big mistakes I made, was all of a sudden I'm around, all this, I found like the keys of the kingdom, and all of a sudden now I know how to, and it's like first time in my life I can actually gain weight. And it was also, I had been a waiter off and on for like a decade, probably like 5-6 years before that, off and on. I'd been a waiter, bartender. So I was on my feet, and I was also working out. And so I was always like super lean, and I couldn't put on a pound. Now I've got this desk job, and it's a real desk job, 40 hours a week. I'm not a freelancer. I'm just sitting in an office, 50 hours a week. And and I'm eating like crazy, and I'm training, and I'm just getting, thinking I'm getting huge, but I was getting fat. And I probably got up to, from a young adult weight of like 165 pounds, probably got up to like 190, which would be, what is that, like 86 kilos?
Yeah, somewhere like 86, 87, yeah.
Yeah, 86, 87 kilos. So that was like me, like at my biggest and also strongest, but fattest I've ever been. And then I went down last few years, got back down to like 175. And now I'm working too much and sitting too much. So I'm creeping back up to 180 and trying to like stop short of 180, which what is that, like 83, 82 and a half? 83.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Kilos. So, I'm trying. So the main thing on the nutrition side, the same thing that everybody should be doing, which is try to cut out as little processed food as possible, and find ways to limit how much total food I eat. And my training, if I worked out as much as I did when I was young, I would be crippled. I mean, I work out 3 times a week. Nothing excessive, total body workouts, don't do any body part splits. If I did, if I ever like did even a few extra sets of anything that involved like shoulder flexion, knee flexion, hip flexion, I'd be so screwed. I'd be so injured. I also spend a lot more time on, well, I shouldn't say a lot more time warming up, but I have a mobility and flexibility routine that I do every time. Now, if I don't have full range of motion, the full range of motion that I'm used to, I'll modify my workout that day. I just won't, like, if I don't have if everything through the hips and knees doesn't feel right, I won't do any, won't do any deadlifts, won't, anything feels slightly pulled or strained or still kind of, exhausted from the previous workout, I'll modify the workout and I won't do anything that's going to make that work. So that's the big thing of aging is, damage control, trying not to lose any ground.
So that would be your big tip for if, say, somebody's in their, say, 40s to 60s listening to this.
But different people age at different rates. I wrote an article on training older clients, and I interviewed Dan John. Wrote this a couple weeks ago. I think it was like either right before or after we published Akasha's article, and it was, and he's like, he and I were born the same year. We were both born in 1957. And he did an Olympic lifting meet a year ago. And it's like, I haven't been able to do an Olympic lift in 10 years, probably. I think I hurt my elbow once on a clean. And it just, it's just that ballistic, that just ballistic movement somewhere in there, pulling or flipping. It was, just something went in my elbow. And it's like, okay, I can't do that anymore. And so everybody's different. Yeah. There might be a 40-year-old out there who has the joints of a 60 or 70-year-old at an extreme. You might have former athletes who are just beat to shit, or you might have somebody who's never done anything and they've just rusted out. They might have some ability, but you got to be really careful with that. So once you get beyond, if you're talking about 20, maybe up to 30, maybe mid 30s, you can talk about people in population wide. And I think once you get over 40, the way that people hit middle age and beyond is so specific to who they are and what their lifestyle's like and what their athletic history is and their conditioning level and all that. So you can't, at a certain point, you just can't make rules that apply to everybody. No. Although I would say that if you're in your 60s and you're not working on mobility, I would change that.
Yeah. Let's keep it then to talking about you.
Great, my favorite subject.
Yeah, well, why not? Why not? If you could turn back the clock to when you're in your 20s, what would you tell yourself? This doesn't have to be training. This could be a life lesson. Could be career related.
Well, and it's not. The biggest thing was that I had ADHD and I didn't know it until I was in my 40s. And once I was diagnosed, because my son also got diagnosed. And when I got diagnosed and started taking the medication for ADHD, all of a sudden, my career, my productivity, my home life, all these things got a lot better. So that's what I would say is it's not if every time you turn around you notice something wrong with the world, it's not the world, it's you. So that's what I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self is, dude, you were born this way. You don't have to you don't have to have the problems that you're about to have over the next 2 decades. You can learn things faster and get along with people better and be happier if you take care of this problem that you have and you were born with, and it's not your fault, but take care of it. That's what I would tell my 20-year-old self. Interesting. And a lot of things would fall into place after that. But then again, I don't want to say that I have any regrets because if I would have had a different life back then, I wouldn't have the life I have now. I wouldn't have met my wife. We wouldn't have gotten married when I was 36. I wouldn't have the 3 kids that I have. So I wouldn't change any of that. I'm just saying that hypothetically, go back in time, that's what I would tell. Like if I could go back and tell a bioidentical self in a different dimension who happens to be 20 years old instead of 60, that's what I would say.
Okay, perfect. Akash, anything that you want to ask before we go into the rapid fire?
What do you see as the future of fitness? Where do you see it going?
The past.
Coming full circle again.
Yeah, coming full circle.
Everything. Because we know how the human body works. We know how to feed the human body. We know how to train the human body. We know how to manage the human body for aesthetics, for strength, for power, for performance. We know how to make people feel better. We know how to make them feel worse. We certainly were really good at making people feel worse, aren't we? And so I think that we know what we know. We'll continually finding probably maybe better or more fun ways to do it, better equipment. You know, you look at recent stuff that's been invented. Kettlebells are fun. Dragging, sleds are fantastic. TRX, magnificent piece of equipment, so much stuff you can do, but we're still, the moving patterns are the moving patterns, the human body's the human body. So I think future of fitness is just some variation on what we've done in the past and what we're doing now.
Perfect.
I hope we stop doing shit that looks cool on Instagram, but actually chews people up and spits them out. I wish we'd stop doing that. But
unfortunately, I don't see that one stopping.
People are going to keep doing that. So
that's it's only going to get worse before it gets better, right?
Right. Well, for some,
Yeah. Okay, on to some rapid fire questions then.
All right.
So if you mentioned right now that you're trying to monitor your diet, trying to eat less processed food.
Right.
Say you had a holiday coming up and you really, went to town on the diet, you went quite restrictive to get yourself in shape for a holiday. When you land, what's the first cheat meal you go for?
What's the first what?
Cheat meal.
Oh, I don't do cheat meals. I'm sorry. I don't. I can't even support the premise of your question because I don't change my diet for anything. When I'm on something that works, I do that 365 days a year. And when it gets to, or I don't know what that is in kilograms, but it's 365 days here in the U.S. So sorry, I always wanted to make that joke with somebody.
Very good.
So when we get to Christmas, I eat the Christmas food. When we have a holiday here, Thanksgiving, I eat the Thanksgiving food. Halloween, I eat, steal the kids' candy. But when basically I don't consider that a cheat meal. It's just, okay, so I ate some of this one day and the next day I won't eat that. That's all I do. I don't do any. The thing is, if I really overeat one day, I'm just not hungry for a couple days and it evens out.
Okay, let me change the question slightly then. How about your favorite home cooked meal that your wife does?
Oh, wow. She's got like 10 things that I absolutely love.
I can see. There you go.
Yeah,
perfect.
During the winter, I love chilies and stews, and during the summer, the lighter stuff. Man, there's one thing I'll grill: ears of corn in the husks, and then we'll peel them. And she used to do it. I've tried it. It doesn't turn out very well, but make a salad with black beans and the grilled corn and avocado. And oh man, that is awesome.
Okay.
But it's open, so it's hot weather, cold weather. She does things sometimes on my workout days where she does a baked eggs with mozzarella and tomato. That's, oh my God, that's incredible with basil. Awesome.
No, that sounds pretty good. Actually, I'm starving right now.
Sorry,
I'm due to eat after this. That's good time. You just give me some inspiration. Thank you.
Yeah.
What would be your go-to alcoholic drink?
Oh, I love wine.
Wine,
yeah. And actually, to modify what I just said, I've got the fitness summit in Kansas City coming up a week from now. And I'm trying to, so I haven't had a beer in like a month, I think. And I'm basically, because I know that's just, doesn't have that many calories, but there's something about it where I get a little fatter if I'm just drinking more beer. I never have more than one a night, but if I have one a night, I have one every night. So it's easier just not to drink. I don't have any in my house right now. Except some that I bought last summer, and I'm still not even sure why, and I don't like them, but they're okay after I cut the grass and I'm all sweaty. So that's the only that's the beer in the refrigerator right now. And but wine is absolutely my favorite. Yeah.
Last one. Who should we have on our podcast next?
Man, have you guys had Alan Cosgrove? I don't know if he has time, but he's from Scotland and he is most interesting, entertaining, inspiring guy. I think you could talk to if he has time. I don't want to volunteer his time. I don't speak for him.
Yeah, we can get in touch and just see.
Yeah. So and my second favorite would probably be Alan Aragon, another co-author. Again, he's at least as busy as Alan Cosgrove, but he is, again, super funny, nice, personable, smart guy.
Yeah, I attended his UK seminar actually a few years back, just before you guys released the book, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it was his sense of humor comes across. You can tell he's very knowledgeable, but he breaks it down and makes it very simple to understand and adds humor to it. So you remember every message he's telling you.
Right. And Alan Cosgrove the same way, fantastic presenter, great at boiling down information or at scaling up information for like an audience of fitness pros. So he can, he's really good at adjusting to the audience that he has. So those would be my two favorite guys. They're incredibly busy, which is, I guess.
Well, we can reach out.
Great. Yeah. Right. So you don't want to talk to somebody who's not busy.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of being busy, thank you very much for affording us your time for us this evening. You. For you, I guess, what's that, early afternoon for you?
It's noon. It's noon here.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for your time, Lou.
Oh, really enjoyed it. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you having me on and letting me, tell all my old man stories. That was fun.
It's been great for us to listen to, especially, the bodybuilding background and the talking on the writing that gives Akash his little moment. And then talk about
I didn't crush his dreams, which is great.
No, exactly. Perfect. So yeah, all around a great podcast episode for us. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
Before we leave you, where can people find out about you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go to my website, Lou Schuler, LOUSCHULER.com. I like I said, I work coming back full circle. I'm the editorial director of the Personal Trainer Development Center now, and we're busy as hell. So I'm not doing anything, for my own social media presence, but you can still find all the information about my books and everything on it's just sort of a floating ghost ship of a website, but it still works. So if you go there, you can get information about the books and everything else.
Awesome. Thank you. Akash, over to you.
Great. And you can find us on Instagram at RNT_fitness or at Akash Fagela or at Adam Haley1. And our website is www.rntfitness.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit subscribe and share with your friends. Thank you.